Hi friends and subscribers, I hope you're all doing well. So this video is going to be a Doctor Who what if scenario, and the scenario I've chosen to do is what if Christopher Eccleston was in Series 2. Now, as we know, Christopher Eccleston left Doctor Who after only one series, and this decision was for him to leave was because of the behind the scenes issues. He didn't like the environment that he was working in, and he had a falling out with the production team, namely Russell T Davies, Phil Collinson, Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter. But in this scenario we're going to imagine an alternative timeline where those behind the scenes issues didn't happen, or at least not at that particular point, and Christopher Eccleston ended up staying for the second series. So in order for this scenario to work, it means we're going to have to change how Series 1 ends. So at the end of the parting of the ways, it does mean that the Ninth Doctor would have to survive the episode. So we could say that, well, Rose would have died if the Doctor hadn't saved her, but because I know that Russell T Davies he didn't like to kill off companions, and Stephen Moffat, wasn't afraid to do that, but Russell T Davies didn't like to kill off companions. So we're going to have to think of a way of how both the Ninth Doctor and Rose survive. So maybe I would say the Ninth Doctor is able to convince Rose to let go of the time vortex. So that's really the best I can come up with, but I think it could work, as it was established in that episode that she could have let go, because he actually, when he did say, "You've got it, now let go." So let's just say in this alternative version of the episode, she lets go and she collapses, and then Doctor takes her into the TARDIS, and then the episode ends and Captain Jack still gets left behind. And then Christmas Invasion, obviously the episode doesn't begin with the TARDIS crashing on the power state, it materialises normally. So the Doctor wants to bring Rose home to her family, and he explains what's wrong with her to Jackie and Mickey. So in this one, Rose takes the place of the Doctor. So just like the 10th Doctor did in our version of Christmas Invasion, Rose is the one that's in bed throughout most of the episode, while the Doctor is active. And obviously the Ninth Doctor would not lose his hand when sword fighting with the Sycorax leader. And then on to Series 2. So in New Earth, I think the Doctor would take Rose there, kind of less of a joyride and more to have her checked out by the cat nuns. So to have her treated, because obviously the cat nuns can treat just about everything except for old age. So, and then the rest of the episode kind of plays out the same from there. But obviously but Cassandra would still take over Rose's body, but not the Doctor's body. While that worked with David Tennant's Doctor, that's not something that I think would have happened with Christopher Eccleston's Doctor. So I think Series 2, we'd still have the same episodes, although they would have to be written differently. Russell T Davies would have approached them differently had Christopher Eccleston stayed on. They would have been written to fit his Doctor. So that means in Tooth and Claw, we wouldn't have the Doctor faking a Scottish accent. School Reunion, I think, would still be the same, although because Christopher Eccleston wasn't as big a fan of the show as David Tennant was, maybe it wouldn't be quite so impactful. Because the 10th Doctor's reaction when seeing Sarah Jane again, that wasn't just the 10th Doctor's reaction. That was also David Tennant. But I still think the episode would be the same. Girl in the Fireplace would be a bit different, because the 9th Doctor wasn't the romantic hero that the 10th Doctor was. So his relationship with Madame de Pompadour would be completely different. It wouldn't be romantic. I think it would be more platonic. And the same with the romance between the Doctor and Rose. It wouldn't happen in this version of Series 2, not with the 9th Doctor. Although I think their friendship would develop more, that their friendship would become even more platonic, and I think the 9th Doctor would mellow a lot more and become less rude than he was in the first series. And then Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, I don't think would change too much. Idiot's Lantern, I think, would still play out the same. So would The Impossible Planet, Satan Pit, as would Love and Monsters and Fear Her. And then Army of Ghosts, Doomsday would still play out the same, probably up until the end. So the 9th Doctor would end up regenerating in the end. So we could say, while the Doctor and Rose are holding on to the magno clamps while sucking all the Daleks into the void, one of the Daleks ends up shooting the Doctor, which causes him to lose control of the magno clamp, and that causes Rose to almost get pulled into the void. But Pete still saves her, and then they still have that emotional goodbye on Bad Wolf Bay at the end. But it'll be even more emotional this time, as the Doctor is regenerating. Even though Rose knows that there's something wrong with him, she doesn't know that he's going to regenerate, because obviously in this timeline he didn't regenerate at the end of Series 1. So he's basically struggling to hold in the regeneration energy while saying goodbye to Rose, which would it'd make it even more emotional than what we got in this timeline. And then after the hologram link ends, the Doctor then regenerates. He kind of regenerates almost dying of a broken heart because he's lost Rose, but it was actually the Dalek shooting him that caused his regeneration. And I think in this timeline, Russell T Davies would still cast David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. And then he regenerates into David Tennant, and then Donna appears inside the TARDIS, just like she did in the actual version of the episode. And then that's how Series 2 ends. So then we still have Runaway Bride. This means Runaway Bride would now be David Tennant's first episode. So the only thing that would need to be changed is the Doctor, because the Doctor's newly regenerated, he would have some post-regeneration sickness. But this time, this will probably be a better first episode for the 10th Doctor, because in Christmas Invasion, he was out throughout most of the episode, and he wasn't completely active until the final act. But in this one, he'd be active throughout, despite his some post-regeneration amnesia. He'd still be able to save the day, as well as having to take care of Donna. And then Series 3, I think, would still play out the same up until the last 3 episodes. So Utopia would be slightly different, because the Doctor didn't lose his hand in Christmas Invasion. We wouldn't have the Doctor's severed hand appearing in the last 3 episodes of Series 3. So in Utopia, Jack would still be able to find the Doctor, but without the hand as a Doctor detector. And Sound of Drums will be slightly different. Without the hand as a biological code, the Master's unable to turn the Doctor into an old man with the laser screwdriver, which also changes the events of Last of the Time Lords, as we wouldn't have the Doctor becoming Space Jesus. But yeah, apart from that, the rest of Series 3 wouldn't really change. And then the events of Voyage of the Damned don't need to be changed. They'd probably still be exactly the same. Series 4 would still play out exactly the same up until the Stolen Earth. So, yeah, when the Doctor and Rose are about to be reunited, instead of the Dalek shooting the Doctor, it instead shoots Rose. So Rose dies, but more on that later. And then in Journey's End, obviously without the Doctor's hand being cut off in this timeline, there's also no meta-crisis. But when the TARDIS gets dropped into the core of the Dalek ship, the burning console room triggers the heart of the TARDIS to open. And then Donna looks into the time vortex, and she uses the power to repair the TARDIS, and then to dematerialize it away from the core. And she also uses the power to bring Rose back to life. I know that does sound a bit fan fiction-y, but yeah, I think it's the best I could come up with, and I quite like the idea. So I'm going to go with that. And then Donna also uses the power, because there's no Metacrisis Doctor, to destroy all the Daleks. Instead, Donna destroys the Daleks with the power. And also because there's no Metacrisis Doctor committing genocide on the Daleks, this kind of means that Rose doesn't have to be returned to the parallel worlds. So instead, let's say she goes off with Mickey and Martha to join Torchwood. And then the Doctor has to wipe Donna's mind. So he still has to wipe her mind, but not because of the Metacrisis, but because of the power of the time vortex. And then the events of the next Doctor still play out the same. That episode doesn't need to be changed. But then in 2009, rather than the year of specials, I think David Tennant would do a third series. So we'd have an alternative Series 5 airing in 2009, which I think would be made up of some of the specials. So Planet of the Dead would be the series opener, The Waters of Mars would be the series finale, but it would be a two-parter, because all of the series from the Russell T Davies era, they all ended with two-part finales. And in this alternative Series 5, the Doctor would have Christina as his companion, but she'd leave him at the end after becoming horrified at his Time Lord Victorious actions. And then we'd still have The End of Time as the two-part festive special from 2009 to 2010. And the episode would still be the same, and it would still end with David Tennant regenerating into Matt Smith. So this means Matt Smith's era would be pretty much unaffected, although Series 5 would now be Series 6, Series 6 would now be Series 7, Series 7 would now be Series 8. And it does also affect the events of Time of the Doctor, because without the Metacrisis, there's no extra gap in the Doctor's timeline, which means that he wouldn't run out of regenerations until the end of Peter Capaldi's era. So in Time of the Doctor, he probably wouldn't regenerate from old age, but instead he would regenerate probably from battle scars on Trenzalore. And then Peter Capaldi's era would still play out the same. It wouldn't really be affected much, except Series 8 would of course now be Series 9. Series 9 would be Series 10, Series 10 would be Series 11. So in The Doctor Falls, that would be the episode where the Doctor's out of regenerations. So Twice Upon a Time would be tweaked slightly. Like in Twice Upon a Time, he's not facing regeneration, but he's actually facing death because he's out of regenerations. But he's still holding on. But then at the end, when he's in the TARDIS, just about to take his final breath, a light appears inside the TARDIS from the TARDIS console. Some regeneration energy appears, and it's from Gallifrey, and the Time Lords give him a new set of regenerations, and then he gives his regeneration speech, and then he regenerates into Jodie Whittaker. So Jodie Whittaker's era would probably be unaffected as well. Although, of course, Series 11 would be Series 12, Series 12 would be Series 13, and Flux would be Series 14. And then the 60th anniversary specials wouldn't change at all, really. We'd still have David Tennant coming back as the 14th Doctor. And then Ncuti Gatwa's era would also be unchanged as well. So yeah, that's what I think would have happened if Christopher Eccleston had stayed for a second series. And although I think it would have been nice, it would have been awesome to see Chris stay longer, as he is one of my favourite Doctors. But I'm kind of happy that things played out the way they did. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.